Eliza loved her grandmother's house. It was a very old house. It was full of interesting corners. It seemed to hold many secrets. Today, Grandma said Eliza could explore the attic. Eliza was very happy. Sunlight made little bright spots on the floor. It came through a small, dirty window. Tiny bits of dust danced in the light. The attic smelled of old wood. It smelled of things forgotten long ago. Eliza felt like a brave explorer on a big adventure. She hoped she would find something truly wonderful. The attic had so many things inside. It was crowded with boxes and old bags. There were old clothes that looked funny. There were hats with feathers and ribbons. Eliza picked up a hat with a big droopy flower. She put it on her head and giggled. It almost covered her eyes. In a dark corner she saw a tall wooden chest. It looked very heavy. It looked very important too. Grandma had told her that some things in the attic belonged to family from many years past. This chest seemed very special. Eliza went over to the big wooden chest. She tried to lift the heavy lid. It was hard work for a small girl. Finally, it creaked open. A little puff of dust came out. It made Eliza sneeze, a tiny achoo sound. Inside the chest there were soft, yellowed cloths. They were folded very neatly, and there, resting on the cloths, she saw it. It was a small thing made of metal. It was not bright and shiny. It was dull and dark from being old. It had an interesting, curvy shape. Eliza picked it up very carefully. It felt cool in her warm hand. The small metal thing was a key. It was an old key, the kind you see in storybooks. It was made of a dark, heavy metal, perhaps brass. It had a round circle at one end for holding. The other end had little teeth cut in a fancy pattern. Eliza had never held a key like this before. It did not look like the keys for her own house door, or the key for her grandmother's car. This key looked like it could open a magic box, or maybe a secret door to a hidden place. She wondered and wondered what lock it might open. Eliza ran down the creaky attic stairs. She held the old key tightly in her hand. "Grandma, Grandma, look what I found!" she called out. Her voice was full of excitement. Her grandmother was in the sunny kitchen. She was making cookies. The kitchen smelled sweet like sugar and warm like cinnamon. Grandma turned around and smiled. She had a little flower on her nose. She wiped her hands on her big, flowery apron. "My goodness, Eliza, what have you discovered up there?" Grandma asked in her kind voice. Eliza held out her hand. The old key lay flat on her palm. "I found this, Grandma," she said. "It was in that big wooden chest in the corner." Grandma took the key from Eliza. She looked at it very closely. Her eyes seemed to grow a little bit soft. A far-away look came into them. "Oh, my dear," she whispered very quietly. "I have not seen this key in so many, many years." Grandma turned the key over and over. She rubbed her thumb across its smooth, worn surface. She looked very thoughtful, as if remembering something. "Does it open something special, Grandma?" Eliza asked. Her voice was small but full of big hopes. She imagined a chest filled with sparkling jewels. Or maybe it opened a secret room hidden in the house. A room no one had seen for years. Grandma sighed a little, soft sigh. "I am not entirely sure, Eliza," she said. "This key belonged to your great-grandfather. He was a quiet man, they say. He loved his garden more than anything. He had many quiet thoughts, I think. Perhaps this key was part of his quiet world." Eliza felt a little shiver of pure excitement. A key that belonged to her great-grandfather. This was even better than finding pirate treasure. This was a real family mystery, a story waiting to be uncovered. "Can we find out what it opens, Grandma?" Eliza begged. "Please, can we try?" Grandma looked at Eliza's eager, hopeful face. A small, gentle smile touched the corners of her mouth. "Well," she said slowly, "perhaps we can try to find out. It might be a little adventure for us, don't you think so?" The very next morning the sun was shining brightly. Little birds were singing happy songs in the tall trees. Eliza and her grandmother decided to go into the village. Eliza carried the old brass key in her pocket. She could feel its cool shape against her leg. She felt very important, like a detective on a case. They thought they would ask some of the older people in the village. Perhaps someone would remember the key, or perhaps someone would remember a story about her great-grandfather and his secrets. It was a good plan. Their first stop was the little post office. Mr. Gable worked there. He'd been the village postman for a very long time. He knew almost everyone in the village, and he seemed to know many of their stories too. Grandma showed Mr. Gable the key. He put on his spectacles to see it better. He scratched his chin slowly. he said, peering at the key. "That is a most curious key. It looks very, very old indeed. Your great-grandfather's, you say? He was a fine man, your great-grandfather. Always busy in his garden, he was?" Mr. Gable thought for a long, quiet moment. He tapped his fingers on the wooden counter. Eliza waited patiently. "I do seem to recall," Mr. Gable said at last, "that he had a special place he liked to go. A quiet place, all his own. He used to call it his thinking spot, but I never did find out where it was exactly. He was a rather private man about some particular things. This key, now, it might just be for that very place." He nodded his head slowly, looking wise. They thanked Mr. Gable for his help. Eliza felt a little bit disappointed. He did not know for sure what the key opened, but she also felt even more curious than before. A special thinking spot, that sounded wonderful. Next, they decided to visit Mrs. Higgins. Mrs. Higgins owned the small village bakery. The bakery always smelled of fresh bread and sweet cakes. She had lived in the village her entire life. Maybe she would have heard something about the mysterious key or the secret place. Mrs. Higgins was a cheerful lady with rosy cheeks. She smiled warmly when Eliza and her grandmother came in. She even gave Eliza a warm sugar cookie fresh from the oven. Eliza nibbled on it happily. It tasted delicious. Grandma showed Mrs. Higgins the old key. Mrs. Higgins put on her own spectacles. She held the key up to the light. She looked at it with great interest. "Oh, my," she exclaimed. "That certainly is an unusual sort of key. I don't believe I have seen one quite like it here in our village." "It belonged to my father," Grandma explained softly. "We are hoping to find out what it might open. We think it was for something he cherished very much." Mrs. Higgins shook her head slowly. Her kind eyes looked sorry. "I wish I could help you more, my dear," she said to Grandma. "Your great-grandfather was a kind and gentle soul. I remember he often bought flower seeds from my shop. He had a great love for flowers, especially the old-fashioned kinds. He was a very gentle man, always kind." Just as they were about to leave the bakery, a thought seemed to pop into Mrs. Higgins's head. "Wait just a moment," she called out, her eyes brightening. "There is someone you could ask. You might try talking to Old Man Hemlock. He lives by himself at the edge of the Whispering Woods. He's even older than I am. He knew almost everyone from that time long ago. He might remember something about your great-grandfather's special key, or perhaps about his private, quiet spot." Eliza felt a little shiver run down her back. It was a shiver of excitement, but also a little bit of fear. Old Man Hemlock. Some of the village children whispered stories about him. They said he was a bit strange and talked to animals, but if he could help them solve the mystery of the key, it would be worth visiting him. Grandma squeezed Eliza's hand gently. "Don't you worry, dear," she said. "He's just a bit solitary. Let us go and see him. This adventure of ours is certainly getting more interesting by the minute." Section 5. The Path Less Trodden. Old Man Hemlock's cottage was very small. It was tucked away right at the edge of the Whispering Woods. A thin curl of smoke rose from its little chimney. A very old apple tree with twisted branches stood in his front garden. Eliza held her grandmother's hand very tightly as they walked. The path leading to his cottage was narrow. It was overgrown with weeds and wildflowers. It seemed that not many people came this way very often. It was very quiet here except for the rustle of leaves. Grandma knocked softly on the old wooden door. The door creaked open slowly, making a little groaning sound. Old Man Hemlock stood in the doorway. He was very, very old. He had a long white beard that reached almost to his belt. His eyes, though, were bright and sharp. They looked very clever. He looked first at Eliza, then at her grandmother. "Well now," he said. His voice was soft and dry, like rustling leaves in autumn. "What brings you two fine people to my little corner of the world on this fine day?" Grandma explained about the key. She told him how Eliza had found it. Then she carefully showed the old brass key to Old Man Hemlock. He took it in his wrinkly, gnarled hand. He held it up and examined it very, very carefully. He turned it over and looked at every little detail. A faint, knowing smile appeared on his lips. "Ah, yes," he murmured, almost to himself. "I remember this key very well. And I remember the good man who carried it. He was a true friend to the trees and the birds." He looked at Eliza with a kind twinkle in his bright eyes. "Your great-grandfather," Old Man Hemlock said, his voice a low rumble. "He had a sanctuary, a hidden place deep within these very woods. Not many people knew of its existence. He told me once that it was a place where the earth kept its oldest and dearest memories. This key, young lady," he said, gently handing it back to Eliza, This key opens the way to that quiet, peaceful place. You must follow the little stream that giggles. That is the way you will find it. The stream that giggles? Eliza asked, feeling a little puzzled by his words. A stream that giggles? Old Man Hemlock chuckled softly, a dry, rustling sound. Aye, that's the one, he said. The little brook that runs along the back of your grandmother's pretty house. Follow it into the woods. Keep your ears open and listen carefully for its happy, bubbling sound. Where it makes a sharp turn near the big mossy rocks, you must look very carefully. You will find what you are searching for there. The woods, you see, they keep their secrets well hidden. Eliza and her grandmother thanked Old Man Hemlock very much for his help. Eliza felt her heart beating fast with anticipation. They were so close now. They hurried back through the village to Grandma's house, then they went straight to the back garden. The little stream gurgled and babbled as it flowed past. It really did sound like it was giggling softly. Eliza listened carefully to its cheerful, playful sound. They started to follow it, walking alongside its grassy bank, deeper into the trees. The stream led them into the cool shade of the woods. Sunlight dappled down through the green leaves overhead. It made dancing patterns on the forest floor. Little birds sang their sweet songs from the branches. The air smelled fresh and earthy, like damp soil and growing things. Eliza walked carefully, watching where she put her feet. Grandma followed close behind, her eyes shining with a gentle, quiet excitement. They walked for some time. The stream twisted and turned. Then at last, Eliza saw them, the big, mossy rocks, just as he said. Just as Old Man Hemlock had described, the stream took a sharp, sudden turn. Eliza stopped and looked all around. At first, she saw nothing but trees and bushes and ferns. She felt a tiny bit of disappointment. Then her eyes noticed something. Hidden behind a thick, heavy curtain of dark green ivy, there was a door. It was an old wooden door. It was set right into the side of a small grassy hill. It was a secret door. Eliza's heart gave a joyful leap. They had found it. Eliza's hands trembled just a little bit. She took out the old brass key from her pocket. It felt warm from being held. It looked as if it was made for this very door, this old, forgotten lock. She carefully put the tip of the key into the rusty keyhole. It was a bit stiff at first from not being used. She turned it gently, trying not to force it. With a soft, satisfying click, the lock turned. Eliza took a deep breath and pushed the door. It creaked open slowly, revealing darkness beyond its frame. Eliza and Grandma stepped inside together. For a moment their eyes needed to adjust to the dim light after the brightness outside. Then, slowly, they saw it. It was not a dark, damp cave as Eliza had half expected. It was a small, walled garden. Sunlight streamed down from an opening high above, as if the sky itself was the roof. It was like a secret room open to the heavens. Wonderful flowers grew everywhere. They were old-fashioned flowers, the kinds Mrs. Higgins had mentioned. It was a truly magical sight. Beautiful roses in shades of pink and red climbed the weathered stone walls. Tiny blue forget-me-nots peeked out shyly from between the cracks in the stones. There were cheerful daisies with bright yellow centers, and tall, elegant lilies stood proudly among the other blooms. Bees hummed happily as they flew from flower to flower. A small stone bench sat peacefully in the center of the garden. It was such a peaceful, magical place. Eliza had never seen anything so lovely in her whole life. It felt like stepping into a beautiful dream. Grandma gasped softly. Her hand went to her mouth. Tears welled up in her gentle eyes. "Oh my," she whispered, her voice full of wonder. "This is his garden. This is my father's secret garden. I never knew it was here. I never knew." She walked slowly among the sweet-smelling flowers. She reached out and touched a soft, velvety rose petal. Eliza watched her grandmother. A feeling of warmth spread all through her heart. This place was truly special. It held so much love and so many memories. Eliza began to explore the small enchanted garden. Her eyes searched every little corner. She noticed a little wooden box. It was tucked away neatly under the old stone bench. It was very old and weathered, just like the secret door. It had a simple metal latch holding it closed. Eliza's heart skipped a beat with fresh excitement. Could this be another secret, another discovery waiting for them? She looked up at her grandmother. Grandma nodded, her eyes still misty with emotion. "Go on, my dear, open it," she said softly. Eliza knelt down and carefully unfastened the little metal latch. She lifted the lid of the old wooden box. Inside, lying on a piece of faded, soft velvet, was a book. It was a small book, bound in dark, worn leather. Its pages were yellowed and fragile with age. A thin leather strap was tied around it, holding it closed like a secret. This must have belonged to her great-grandfather. This, Eliza thought, this was the real treasure of the secret garden, more precious than any gold or jewels. Eliza gently picked up the old journal. She handled it with great care. She stood up and handed it to her grandmother. Grandma's hands shook just a little bit as she took the precious book. She untied the thin leather strap. With a soft sigh, she opened the journal to the very first page. The handwriting inside was neat and elegant. It was written in faded brown ink, the color of tea. My dearest thoughts, the first entry began. Below it was a date from many, many years ago, long before Eliza was born. This is his journal, Grandma said, her voice filled with a deep, tender emotion. He wrote down his thoughts here, his dreams for the future, his memories of our family. She looked at Eliza, her eyes shining. He wrote about his great love for this little garden, and he wrote about all his hopes for the future, for his children and for their children too. Eliza felt a strong, invisible connection to the great-grandfather she had never met. It was as if his spirit was there with them in the peaceful garden. Eliza and her grandmother sat down together on the old stone bench. The warm afternoon sun shone down on them. It made the flowers glow with color. The bees hummed their gentle, busy song all around. Grandma began to read aloud from the journal. She read about her great-grandfather's childhood adventures. She read about his deep love for nature, for the trees and the birds. She read about the special day he first met Eliza's great-grandmother. It was like listening to him speak directly to them across the years. They sat and read for a long, long time. Sometimes Grandma's voice would tremble with emotion. Sometimes she would pause and smile at a happy memory. Eliza learned so much about her family that day. She learned about their simple joys and their quiet sorrows. She learned about their family traditions and their hopes for those who would come after them. The journal was like a magical bridge. It connected them to the past. It made her great-grandfather feel real and very close. He was not just a name anymore. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, painting it with soft colors, they gently closed the journal. Grandma put her arm around Eliza and hugged her tightly. "Thank you, my dear Eliza," she said, her voice soft and warm. "Thank you so much for finding the key. You have given me back a precious piece of my heart today. And you have helped us connect with our family history in such a truly beautiful and special way." Eliza felt happy tears in her own eyes. She was so glad they had this adventure. They left the secret garden as the evening dusk began to fall. They carefully locked the old wooden door behind them. The key felt different in Eliza's hand now. It was not just an old, forgotten piece of metal anymore. It was a key to wonderful memories. It was a key to understanding her family. Eliza knew she would never, ever forget this special day. The adventure of the enchanted key had brought her closer to her beloved grandmother, and it had brought her closer to the past that had shaped them all into who they were.